Welcome to Make Your Own Fun. I'm here with Nancy Lynee Wu, and her latest collection is I'd Rather Be Lightning by Gasher Press. So, congratulations on that. That's an awesome accomplishment. So, I wanted to start off today because there are so many people that we know and maybe that are watching this for the first time, and they have a manuscript and they're trying to, get that out there. So, how did the book come together and get selected by Gasher Press? Like, had you heard about them before?
Yeah, so I actually joined my MFA program, Antioch University, with the specific goal in mind of learning how to put together a poetry manuscript because I had tried on my own for many years before and I just floundered and I was like, and multiple versions of just random stuff and it wasn't really working out for me. So I went to Antioch and they really helped me learn how to put together a manuscript. Let me clarify that. Mostly it was that I had deadlines and accountability, so I had to do it.
Hmm.
And so when I finished the manuscript, I felt pretty strongly about it. But I will say, actually, before I tell you about how I sent it off, I got the manuscript about 80% done, and I could tell there was something missing. I was like, but I don't know what it is. Like, I just know it's not done yet. And because I write a lot about the environment and ecology, and especially even the Southern California landscape, I decided to take myself on a writing retreat to Joshua Tree. And so I rented an Airbnb for like 3 days, and I just took myself out there with me and my binoculars watching the birds. And I allowed inspiration to strike, and I got the poems that I needed. I don't know how to say it other than like I got the poems from Joshua Tree. And so then I figured, okay, the manuscript is done. And when I had that feeling, it's like an internal radar that I only now can talk about since I've experienced it. Because before the book, I was like, how do I know when a book is done? And then when the book was actually finished, I was like, oh, okay, it's done. Like, whatever this book is for right now, it's done. And so at that point, I had the manuscript and I started looking for publishers. Um, I hadn't known Gasher before, but I had a friend who did, who recommended them, and I checked them out and I liked the look of them. They had a very good reputation in the literary marketplace, and I liked the looks of their books. And I was sending my manuscript out to, I probably sent it out to about a dozen places. And actually, I got the notification that Gasher wanted to publish me, and then a week later, I got another message from another press called Nomad that they wanted to publish the manuscript. So here I was in kind of a bind,
Good problem to have.
like a good problem to have. I was like, which one am I going to go with? I decided to go with Gasher because the editor, Whitney, was so amazing. She had a Zoom meeting with me. It was very personalized. You know, she really, really seemed to resonate with the work and like really wanted to publish it. And I was going to be actually the first round of books for Gasher's
Oh,
repertoire. Yeah, because they actually were a journal first and then started publishing books. So I was the first round of books, and I chose them because of that special attention. And the other press would have been great too, but I was going to be one of like 14 different books coming out that year, and it just seemed like I was going to have less hands-on attention.
like you might have gotten
Um,
lost in the shuffle a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. So even though Gasher was a little bit smaller, I was like, I don't know, it feels right, feels good, like it feels like a really good place, a home for my book. So that's how I went with Gasher.
Excellent. So just for, people who are, like I said, thinking about or in the process itself, how long would you say from like the oldest poem, the first poem in the book, until the actual release was that like time frame?
So the oldest poem in the book was from 2014. Um, yeah, so if you count that, I guess you could say the book took about 9 years to complete. Because it's my first one, and like I said, I didn't know what I was doing. Like I write poems about all sorts of different things, and I was like, am I supposed to put together a book of like random stuff, like a whole bunch of random stuff? Is it supposed to have a theme? Is it supposed to be cohesive? So I did decide to go the route of trying to put together a theme, and my theme is like ecocentrism and ecology and climate change. So I was writing poems towards that. But I actually had found that oldest poem from 2014 because in the process of writing the manuscript, I went back and I did a thorough investigation of every single poem I had ever written in the past, this was 2019, so in the past 5 years, I guess, um, or so. No, 8 years. Yeah, in the past 8 years that I had been writing, I pulled them all out. I went through a very intense checklist of, oh, keep this one, throw this one away, put this one in the maybe pile. And so I had a lot of poems to work with. And so that was the oldest poem that I'd found that had gotten lost in the shuffle many years ago. And I was like, oh, well, actually, this one fits. So if you're gonna, yeah, think about it that way, I did reclaim some abandoned poems.
That's nice. Yeah, there's a lot of people that I talk to that are kind of in that process and just kind of getting their first steps into that pool. And I'd never want to dissuade anybody, but I do say, hey, it does not happen overnight. And there's a hellish process that I think we've all been through called editing. Not just
Yep.
like yourself, but there's different tiers, there's different levels, and in fiction, I think that there's also the similar thing in poetry. It's like kind of have to kill your babies. There's going to be some stuff where you're like, how could you do this to me and rip my heart out and take out that one line I thought that was holding the poem together? And they're just like, Yeah, that's nice that you think that, but we need to make this into a book.
Yeah.
Um, well, I was wondering if you'd be so kind if you have some stuff within arm's reach, if you'd like to read us one right now.
Sure. And I'm actually going to read you a poem that, like you had just said, I had an editor, my friend, who's a very wonderful poet and editor, Henry Medina, look at this poem recently for a grant that I'm applying to.
Mhm.
And the book has already been published, right? And so he was looking at this poem. He was like, I don't think you need the last stanza. And I was like,
That's like a
ah,
record scratch. Like, what?
it's like, I already published it. But but I was like, but you're right. I don't need the last stanza. So I'm actually gonna read it without the last stanza. Yeah. So this is my love song for Mojave. Bumpy, forlorn expanse of sandy loam, I'm in love with your vastness, alluvial rug rolling without interruption toward horizon. Mojave yucca, white-crowned sparrows, creosote tea, gopher snakes, jumbo rocks. Do not die today, reads every welcome sign to Joshua Tree National Park. Warning, city dwellers, how you celebrate August with swelling organs, nausea, red hot throbbing, dizziness, death. It's only 3 hours back to the city, where fresh water routed from elsewhere colors Southern California lawns of verdant green. The yellow spiny lizard tries to teach me stillness. A storm whips across the sky. We drink from clouds. To the west, Big Bear is frozen with snow. We might not notice a few degrees of difference each winter. As much as I revere you, I tremble outside below freezing. The antelope squirrel scoops up crumbs. The rattlesnake hisses. Somewhere a fisherman hauls a fat trout out of a mountain stream. I catch it in the net of my mouth.
Yeah, I like that ending. I'm trying to remember how it ended originally when I read it the first time, but yeah, I that one is just really the way it ends is pretty powerful.
Thank you. Yeah.
Um,
And so whenever I read it now, I'm just gonna chop that last stanza and be like, oh well.
so for the folks who haven't seen it, can you hold the book up? And I don't know if they can
Yeah.
focus on that or not.
Let me unblur my background real quick. Don't look at my messy books in the background, but this is the
I
book.
would just keep the background off because it's like no one can tell what that stuff is. Like behind me, this is not a magic curtain. Just outside, it's America. It's just
Yeah.
nothing
Well, you
special.
you can see my massive stack of books and my mannequin behind me. So
I've seen crazier stuff where people are like, "Oh, we're recording." Oh, yeah. So show the folks the book. And so who did the artwork for that?
Oh my gosh, this amazing collage artist named Julian Picard, and he's on Instagram. Uh, if you want to check him out, JulienPacaud. Just an amazing digital collage artist that we found. And I think I like to tell people uh, the inside of the book is okay, but it's really the cover that, shines.
And I have to say, I think at the reading in Long Beach that I went to, where you were reading, and I saw that for the first time. At first, I was like, "Is that a novel?" I knew you were reading poems, but from far away, I was like, "Is she reading from a novel?" Because it just has the cover has that kind of something that you would catch your eye, and obviously, you're not supposed to judge a book by its cover. But I went, "That's a pretty awesome cover."
Yeah.
So who did the layout? How did that come about? Did you have to pull somebody from outside to do that, or was that in-house?
I was in house with Gasha. They had their own layout person, who is named Remy, who's awesome. And they also helped me with editing the book. So they gave me editorial feedback, but they were really awesome because they let me have a lot of the creative control. I've heard from a lot of different people. There's different types of publishers out there. My publisher was just amazing and they gave me really great feedback, but they didn't force me to change anything. So
Mm.
they were like, everything is in my hands. If I decide that I want to make changes, then great. And if not, they're fine with that. So
So it's kind of
that was
like
really great.
they were hands off, but also kind of they weren't going to let you crash and burn.
Exactly. Which is like, it's like the gutters in the bowling alley, Like,
Well, that's amazing. So I guess you've got the book, you've got a lot of other projects going on, but I was really curious to see if you thought about testing out any other forms of writing that deal with being in front of the public. Like, have you considered maybe playwriting or songwriting or things like that? Are there things that you're thinking about doing or trying?
yeah, actually, I love that question because I do like to play around with different types of mediums. Like if for those of you who haven't seen my book, I have like a visual poem in there. I have a crossword poem in there. So I like to try out some fun things. And right now I am playing around with a few different things. Well, first of all, I've done poetry with music.
Hmm.
So I've performed with band behind me and had a poetry music CD published, an actual CD-ROM like 10 years ago. So I've done that. I also like to play around with collage. That's what I'm really into right now. So I'm playing around with words on the collage page. Um, I have also started writing a little bit of fiction and creative nonfiction. And one of the things that I'm thinking about, you mentioned playwriting. One of the things I'm working on right now is a piece about my ongoing friendship with my best friend who lives in Colorado. And we talk on the phone almost every day. And our conversations are just wild and hilarious. And it's like, I want to try and capture our relationship because we'll be on the phone. We've had a marathon phone conversation for up to 4 hours, just like going about our business, cleaning the house or doing whatever, walking the dog. And we talk about everything under the sun. So I was starting to think about, like, oh, wouldn't it be kind of cool to put together a play where we have kind of two separate rooms and you see the people interacting, but they're talking to each other, but they're not in the same location. Like I'm over here doing my thing, she's over here doing her thing.
Mhm.
So that's one thing I was thinking about. Um,
I could
yeah,
totally see that. I could see that thinking about, staring straight ahead at a stage and then having kind of like the split set and then I don't know, whatever you're going to call it. You could call it other rooms or whatever. And um it's almost like it's the same story, but you're only getting half of it. And then so like the one person is imagining what is going on and the other person's imagining what's going on in there, and it's not really, I mean, it sounds like murder, but they're just yelling at their dog because they made a mess in the living room or something, and they're just like, what is
yeah,
going on over there?
yeah, exactly.
Well, and there's something else I know about you about that's creative that I want to share with everybody, that I am super curious about, and Nancy, inquiring minds want to know. When are you going to get back into acting?
Oh, I mean, that one thing I did with you was basically like the only little performance I've done
But
in
you
that
were so
regard.
good. Everybody was like, "Oh
Oh.
my God, she stole the scene. She was so great."
Oh, well, thanks. What's funny is I actually feel like I'm pretty shy. Yeah, like
I don't get that
internally.
impression, but I'm 3,000 miles away, so what do I know?
Actually, I did do a stage performance in 2022. That was a really fun project. I have a friend who's a director, and she put together a really cool show called Behind the Mask. And it involved getting together about 14 different artists around the table between writers, poets, actors, musicians. And we sat together for 6 weeks, every once a week, and this was still when we were coming out of the masking and things were still kind of weird. And so we were talking a lot about our experiences with COVID during the pandemic. And each week she would give us a piece of homework to write a new piece. And so out of those pieces that we wrote, we chose the best ones and then put together a show. And we performed at the Aurora Theater, which is a tiny little black box theater here in Long Beach. And it was really fun. It was really, so that, I guess you could say, was another thing that I've done, and it was great.
Well,
But I need,
you should do more. I'm just saying.
thank you. I really need to, like, I don't really seek out that sort of thing, but if it comes to me, I'll be like, sure.
You're like, hmm.
Yeah,
All right. Well, let us hear another poem if you have one handy. I'm sure the folks would like to hear another
sure.
one.
Let's do a fun one.
Okay.
This one, so this is where I really like to play with language. This is called A Brief History of Newts. I'm cradling a newt in my mittens. It's a Sir Isaac Newton hooting. It's a neuron, naturally. It's all some form of it, and I am a shapeshifter, pulling on skins like a wetsuit. Ringleader, fire dancer, rabble rouser, learning spells to unlearn fast fashion, leaning back into slow money. Closet bursting, I'm coming out in ballerina slippers, clown nose, bow tie. Sipping on mocktails with fresh mint, I'm growing new heads again. Hydra wearing headdresses and cowboy boots, rainbow boa trailing from my broomstick, flying in the wind of fancy, caught in the middle of a scent frankincense and myrrh. I turn, and a string of jewels jangle. Steel beams fill the skyline. Mercy me, machines feeding. I see how raccoons might seem dispensable from the 27th floor. Angling the long scope of spyglass toward the tinted windows of corporate ballrooms lifting into space, I whisper to passing crows, "It's time. Phase out the drilling. Invest in solar. So mote it be. I live near a rising sea, kicking fins back in defiance, wading into the wardrobe. I slip on a snorkel. I carry a notebook and a jar of seeds. Steady your hand and write, says my higher self, of newts and newspapers, gorgons and gingriches, sinkholes and shifting faces. Why every bird name matters. Sapiens, stand down, I decry. Eye of newt, regenerate. A cauldron boils the ticker tape of Wall Street into a magic lip balm, my brand new business plan. I'm shimmying out a storm, brewing all sorts of brouhaha, waving scepters of welcome and wonder. This time we're gonna get filthy rich, bringing the empire to its knees.
Excellent use of brouhaha.
Thank you.
I like that. What was the inspiration behind that? Can you remember?
Um, let's see, what was it? This was actually one of the I think this was one of the old poems that I had rescued from a long time ago and just updated it. So the I think the inspiration was just playing with words. Yeah, it just started with playing around with Newt and Newton and neuron and trying to put together something that linked these types of similar words.
Excellent. Okay, so I know you've done like so many people I've talked to on here, and the exact number is 11 billion open mics in your life.
Yep.
So, so can you think of kind of like a crazy open mic experience that you had um, with your work when you're trying out something different to an indifferent audience, something new, you're trying out something you haven't done before, and it's just not landing. Do you just feel like you plow through it and then you're like, oh God, and then get off the stage? Or do you shift gears in the middle of it, kind of like a stand-up comedian, and do a different line reading? So I want to kind of pick your brain about that.
Well, I think with poetry, it's a little bit harder than comedy to gauge your audience's reactions like during the moment because with a comedian, if they're laughing, then you know you're doing a good job. And if they're not laughing when they're supposed to be laughing, you might want to try something different. And I guess, I've gone up to many, many open mics with new pieces that I've wanted to try out and wasn't sure about. Um, but I kind of just plow through. I kind of just have my set and I read it, and by the end of it, I'll just feel to myself and be like, how did that go? And if people come up to me and tell me they liked it, then I'm like, okay, cool. And if I don't get any responses, I'm like, maybe that wasn't, the best. Maybe I need to work on that poem a little bit more.
Well,
So.
it's not always you, it's the audience. And if I know you've done readings outside of town and it's just they don't know you, they don't know your style. So you're in a different state, different city. And sometimes you just get up in front of people and you've got your phone or your pages and you're reading and it's just dead silence. And then right as you're about to get off stage, there's just that one jackass in the back of the room that just does that like one cough, like ah, just to kind of kill the silence. And you're like, okay, well, that happened, and you get off, and it's like, but like I was talking to, Brian Ellis about this too, which is sometimes they're just so into what you're saying, like you're just pouring your heart out, you're doing this kind of confessional poem or something, and they're just riveted, and the whole time you're thinking, oh God, they're just not connecting, they're just not into it, not even a woo or a yeah or oh God. And then you go, later when people are kind of convalescing or whatever, and then, they're like, oh, I love that one line. And you go, oh, you were listening. You did like it.
Yeah, and it's funny because I have poems that have a little bit of humor in them, and so I kind of know where the spots are where I expect people to laugh, kind of like a comedian. And so when they're not laughing, that's kind of a sign where like, wait a minute, uh-oh, what? Why aren't they laughing? Um, but yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, it's hard to tell poetry until the end. So I've actually learned uh, a little bit of a pre-performance tip that I like to use, which is trying to get into a meditative state before I go on just a little bit and connect with myself. And I imagine I do a lot of visualizations in my meditation practice. So I'll envision my heart connecting out with everybody in the audience and their hearts. And so I'll just like create this aura of connection in my mind. And whether I'm connecting with them, whether their responses are outside of my control, I'm going in feeling connected. And I think that's the big difference. When I go in and I feel kind of down or poopy or like I don't really feel like being on stage today, but I have a scheduled reading, so I have to do it. Those are the times when I feel like I'm less connecting, but also a lot of people can't really tell. I've noticed, like if I go up and I'm not feeling the greatest, there doesn't really, only I know that inside. I'll still show up and do the thing. But it does help if I try and connect with people in my mind ahead of time. And then I show up and I act as if I'm like as if I'm already connecting, and then that creates the connection because I'm so comfortable on stage with my work, and then they are comfortable, and so that is something that I like to use to help out.
Okay, I can understand that. I think that from now on you should be just really forthcoming with people when you show up to an event and they're just saying, "Well, Nancy, how are you?" And you can just say, "Poopy." Really, just down in the dumps, poopy. Um, the building on so building on that, what is a goofy slash fun stress reliever activity you do to get away from everything? Like, let's say you're going to go on tour and you're going to go to a venue and it's like a book release thing. There's going to be a little bit of anxiety and like, oh God, I really got to deliver for this. And like, I've got a trunk full of books and oh my God, I got to sell these. And oh, the publisher's going to want an update. So is there something you do that it's fun? I mean, you're talking about the meditative thing, but like, how do you go to relieve stress before, after? Because I think everybody's got that thing that they need to do to just have fun that's not related at all to, the event or the poetry.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just for me, the meditative part of it is really big. Like before I go on, when I'm traveling, this is what I did when I was traveling to Colorado last year. I have this special spot in my neighborhood that is the Colorado Lagoon, and I'll walk there pretty much every day with my dog. And so I'll sit there. I mean, I don't know if this is considered fun, but for me, it's like fun and important. So I'll sit there and I will soak up the sun and be in nature, and I'll actually imagine transferring this very calm, confident energy from myself at that moment to myself in the future. So I will like send the energy that I'm cultivating to myself on stage in the future. And then when I'm in that state, when I'm on stage, I'm channeling that energy that I had already cultivated and feeling, more confident. But as for more fun stuff, I mean, I will generally like after a reading like to decompress and go hang out with friends. You know, go to a wine bar or whatnot. And um, I mean, I don't know if this is super appropriate, but I super love marijuana. And I will like to do that afterwards, not before. But
I'm just picturing you like wandering around on stage, not even anywhere near a podium, just feeling like a drape and just talking about how poopy you feel now.
yeah, that's one of my alter egos there.
I think there's a future poem in there. I feel poopy.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I guess we'll just do a little quick one here and let the folks know kind of like how you initially got into poetry. Was it you got gifted a book, somebody dragged you to an open mic or a workshop? Do you kind of remember that kind of like that first kind of inkling?
Oh yeah, for sure. I feel like my journey was very serendipitous, but I actually had been writing poems since I was a child. So I had a secret message board when I was a teenager where I'd write my little angsty poems. But then I went off to college, didn't really do poetry too much, came back to Long Beach, and that's really where things started when I was about 23. Um, and I had a friend who was trying to hook me up with her friend. And so I went on a date with him and we started dating. And he was the managing editor, I think, of a local press. And that actually kind of was the door into, oh, wow, there's like all these poets here on stage doing stuff, like real live poets that I didn't know about before because, being outside of the poetry scene, you don't realize that there's so much going on in it. And so that was one of the first entrances. And then the second thing was that I was thinking to myself, oh, wouldn't it be nice to have like a poetry group? And I even thought about starting my own, like trying to find other poets, like who are the other people I can connect with? And then I saw that the poetry lab by Danielle Mitchell was starting at We Labs, and I was actually at the very first poetry lab session with Murray Thomas. It was me and Murray sitting there with Danielle Mitchell, and that was kind of the real opening because then Danielle would do workshops with Poetry Lab pretty frequently, and I was going to them religiously. I was just like, this is where I need to go to write and to meet people. That's how I met Sarah Thursday, and then when I met her, we started doing readings, and she published my first chapbook, and it just sort of blossomed from there. So just that those first two little instances, and then yeah,
Wow.
everything opened.
Just did a roll call there, and I have nothing but nice things to say about all those people. In fact, I will just come out and say that Danielle Mitchell was the one who introduced me to the Canva program before advertising
Oh,
online because, and I'm still not great with it, but I'm doing cookie cutter, but whatever. So I'm eternally thankful to her for that. And Murray Thomas, talk about a guy who has like seen it all and heard it all and read it all and wrote it all. I mean, I know he's got much more to say and share, but yeah, that he is an invaluable resource for sure. So that's awesome. I'd love if we could get one more poem before we wrap it up here.
yeah, sure.
Like you
So
have a whole book of them or something.
I know. Let's see what to do. Okay, I'll do this one. This is a little bit more of a fun one too. So this is called Self-Portrait with Window and Balloons. I'm music stand and mud, littered with the plastic lips of a late night celebration. I'm walking down a bowling alley, ready to strike gently. I've stopped at a gas station to fill the well with helium, squeaking, please don't let anyone I love die before their time. A guy on a bike with a boombox rides by, arms out like a kite. Confetti stains the shelves where toilet paper used to be. I check my phone again in the middle of foraging for bubble wrap. What's happening in India? What are all my friends thinking about right now? Did you know fungi are the eye of life, slurping up oil spills and burping out bug habitats? I'm learning how to grow food from the actual ground, swelling up like a paper lantern, freed from festivities, box of seeds tucked under my pits, a little bit stinky. I needed solitary refinement. I needed to ravage the mouthy dirt of Mother Earth with my fingers, to remember which veggies grow in the fall. Now I'm bursting into bubblegum, ready to be chewed until zucchini, beets, beans, carrots, crookneck squash, potatoes, pumpkins, pop! A pink slinky blinks down concrete stairs. Countdown! 5. I prefer to do my business in the woods. taking calls from the glass house of my mind. 4. I'm jumping out of a senator's skirt, basket of hot air landing in a bed of moss. 3. I take child's pose on the bluff, worshipping the opalescent glow of my own magnetic field. 2. It's time to play the fool again. I steal a glance at myself in a barber shop window. 1. The mask slips down my nose and suddenly balloons. Balloons, balloons, balloons everywhere. Balloons pouring out of windows, nostrils, elevators. Balloons stuffed into shirt sleeves. Balloons on the wrists of lizards. Balloons being licked by monkeys. Balloons bobbing in chocolate fondue, balloons barging out the chimney flue, balloons stuck to stripper heels, balloons drifting down hallways, balloons with the happiest sad faces, balloons floating up the well, balloons yipping and yapping about an apocalypse party like it's time to rewild this city.
Awesome. I have to say, that has a great kind of Shel Silverstein feel to it.
Yeah,
So I really appreciate
thanks.
I really enjoyed his stuff growing up. So as we wrap it up here, what do you have coming up next, and where can the folks find your work online?
Yeah, well, thanks, Eric. This has been such a fun interview. I really appreciate it. So, I am working on my second book right now, and yeah, whenever it's done, I'll start trying to find a publisher. But I am currently in the middle of a lot of projects, actually, and not to, be here for another 4 hours, I will just say I am working right now on putting together some eco poetry workshops. So I'm basically bringing people out to the park, specifically right now, the LA River, and inviting them to come out, enjoy being outside, and writing poetry as we go along. So this has been a vision that I've had since basically like mid 2021. I started camping and hiking a lot when everything was shut down. I started reconnecting with nature. So now I'm bringing people out into nature to write poems and use that as a way to connect. I'm working with the nonprofit LA River Arts to do this as a part of my Creative Corps grant right now, the California Creative Corps. And so that's one thing. I'm also working as the Youth Poet Laureate Fellow with the Long Beach Public Library right now, which is so fun. Yes, I get to help the young poets. I get to mentor them and do workshops with them and help design the program because we're just finishing up the first year. So we're heading into the second year and putting all the pieces together for it. And let's see. I mean, if people want to find me, you can find me on Instagram at Fanciful Nance. And yeah, I mean, I think that's all I can think about for the time being.
Well, there's also nancylenewu.com.
Yes, thank you. Also, my website. Yeah.
Okay. No problem. Well, thank you again for being on the show. Your poetry is delightful. Get that book, folks. You will see a link in the credits where you can find that. So enjoy the rest of your weekend. Happy St. Patrick's Day, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Thanks, Eric. Have a good day, everyone.
Bye.